What were you doing while watching the US Grand Prix? Me? Well, I was enjoying a nice IPA and doing maths. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy. I talk F1 in the world's second worst accent, and these are my 3 conclusions from the 2025 United States Grand Prix. Somebody just dropped a can in front of my house, and I have no idea if that's going to be in the audio for this. As long-time viewers will know, I often thoroughly enjoy the more pedestrian races due to my enjoyment of spending more time focusing on the timing chart without risking a rewind for some action that's gone on when I'm too busy working out where in the order someone would pop out if they were to pit on the next lap. So when things started to spread out and there wasn't a whole lot going on in Austin on Sunday, it was actually a pretty fun time for me. Fully tooting my own horn here, but I accurately predicted Ferrari pitting Charles Leclerc on lap 23, Stroll coming in beyond half race distance for yet another ridiculously long stint that made him a whole lot of positions, and of course don't forget Mercedes pitting George Russell 12 laps from the end for some lightly used softs and a big pace advantage with very little risk. Did that last one actually happen? No. Should it have? Maybe. Let's just have a little bit of a chat about the data. Time lost in the pits for a regular green flag stop in Austin is around 21 seconds. In the middle of his soft tyre stint, George was still stuck in 6th, running around 20 seconds ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, who was back in 8th, 5 seconds adrift of Yuki Tsunoda, both of whom were just kind of running their own races at that point. Now granted, George's pace on the softs in the second half of the Grand Prix was pretty consistent. There wasn't really any massive peaks or troughs to it. Apart from a brief dip into the 139s from lap 40 to 43, he was generally plugging away in the mid to high 138s. Now whether that was the extent of the pace and the maximum Mercedes was willing to do based on temperatures and fuel and deg and everything else that you have to consider isn't something that you can glean from George's race radio. Earlier on in the Grand Prix, he'd made note of Ferrari's pace on the softs not being great, had some minor overheating issues that seemed to resolve themselves, and I can't help but wonder if had Mercedes done something a little bit different and gone for a 2-stop, medium soft, that it would have at least given them the opportunity to get closer to Oscar towards the end, simply by virtue of being able to lean on the tyres, especially if they'd undercut Oscar at the end of the first stint. Because they really had nothing to lose. Even if it was bailing out of the one-stop sometime around lap 44, they were already stuck in a holding pattern, not making any progress against Piastri and effectively accepting a 6th place finish without having a crack at the last-ditch sprint to the end. Had Mercedes pitted George at that point, he probably would have come out just behind Hülkenberg, who was on 10-lap-old soft tyres, who in turn was around 5 seconds behind Tsunoda on 14-lap-old softs. At worst, George would have ended up back where he started, but there would have been at least a chance, however tiny, of putting the hammer down and pumping out 10 big push laps in completely clear air to try and hunt down Piastri. Is there risk involved? Of course. It's Formula One. Is it likely he would have caught Piastri at the end? Probably not. I mean, he would have needed to gain about 2 seconds a lap, and considering the race lap record around Austin is around 2.5 seconds less than what George was putting in at that point, in a different generation of car, it's highly unlikely. But it's about the audacity to give it a crack. With Oscar's form as of late, you never know when he's going to string together a few mistakes. And if he knows he's got a car bearing down on him at a rate of knots, there's more chance that you can put the pressure on to force him into something. And with Lewis Hamilton's last lap issues, that one position could have been 2 and not only mean more points for Merc, but fewer for Ferrari. And sure, fuel and temperatures may have been a factor here, but with Mercedes in a position where a few points here and there could be the difference between 2nd and 4th in the Constructors' Championship now that Red Bull's back in the fray, I think it's something they should have tried if they had enough left in the tank to make the in-lap. So conclusion? Mercedes feels like it's playing it safe, and I can't help but feel like that might cost them a position or 2 in the Constructors' Championship come the end of the year. Moving on to McLaren and the obvious problem of their continued determination to stick with this 2 number 1 drivers philosophy that's historically proven to go really well for them. Even though Ron Dennis no longer holds the purse strings around Woking, the culture of supposed equity that he championed to, shall we say, mixed results during his time in charge of McLaren continues to be part of their ethos. Now, this is the first time that McLaren has had 2 drivers at the same level while fighting for a championship since 2007, and what we're seeing play out here feels kind of like a replay, just without the whole first season for both drivers with the team and one of them being an unexpectedly immediately rapid rookie thing. Back in Monza, I was talking about Max being a threat, however silly it might seem. After Baku, I was eating my words on the silly bit. Now, Max sneaking in and snatching the Drivers' Championship from under Piastri and Norris's nose is actually a real thing that might happen. And McLaren is still singing from the same songbook. Now that needs to change, and it needs to change immediately, and they can't take the supposed easy way out and keep saying publicly that their drivers are equal while behind the scenes doing the opposite, because, well, they already have enough people speculating about what's going on behind closed doors as it stands, plus you've got the Palou vs McLaren lawsuit happening, which is putting even more of a spotlight on how they go about managing their drivers. So being disingenuous about favouring one over the other would be even more of a media storm. No, McLaren just needs to pick a guy, admit they've picked a guy, and stick with it. They need to work together to protect the gap back to Max, and whoever that guy is, whether it's Oscar because he's been leading since Saudi, or Lando because he's on better form right now and has been in the trenches with the team since 2019, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. But I think the problem is, I don't think McLaren actually gives a toss about the Drivers' Championship at all, at the company level anyway. They've got the Constructors' Trophy and the cash that goes along with it all sewn up, and from a team that feels more corporate than the ultra-corporate Mercedes, it really seems like that's all that really matters to them. Not to the guys in the cockpits, not to the people in the garage, but to the people in the boardroom, and more importantly, Mumtalakat Sovereign Wealth Fund. And let's not also forget that point that I love to make over and over about hype, viewership, and the direct correlation between F1's profits and F1 teams at the end of the season. You have a Max Verstappen bearing down on the leaders of the championship who are scrapping it out between themselves and taking points off one another. You have more hype. The rest of the races might sell out because yes, there are still 3-day passes on sale for all of the remaining weekends. More people buy merch. More people shell out for the F1 TV subscription rather than looking for a dodgy stream. You might end up with a 2007 situation, but at least you made a couple of $100,000 more from your share of the spoils, right? And now that these supposed repercussions of Lando's bit of wheel banging in Singapore are pretty obvious, since Oscar was given priority in a few key moments where in the past he probably wouldn't have been, McLaren has shown that they're willing to prioritise stupid intra-team politics over what is actually doing the right thing by your drivers and helping one of them take home that one thing that every single F1 driver has dreamt about since they were a little kid. And that, in my opinion, sucks. Having said that, would I prefer to watch a title fight between 3 drivers from 2 teams? Of course, these things can be true at once. Finally, and very interestingly in my opinion, it's clear that the broadcast centre team went through Singapore's criticisms with a fine-tooth comb and listened to the feedback, because the change in the global feed was pretty obvious. Did they pick the perfect time to cut to things? No. Were they slow at showing replays of significant incidents like the ones involving the Williams drivers? Yes. Was it overall an improvement? In my opinion, yeah, a pretty significant one. A lot more picture-in-picture, I only had to look at Benedetto Vigna for half a second. In general, it just felt like a broadcast that had the intent to show a broader view of the action, and I appreciated that. And no, I don't have a whole lot more to say on the matter other than keep plugging away at it, guys. You're making steps in the right direction, and I know it's a really blimmin' hard job that's impossible to get right every single time and completely thankless. But it's good to see that the criticism was noted and the action has been taken. So that's it. That's my 3 conclusions from the 2025 US Grand Prix. What are yours? Do you think that Franco Colapinto just torpedoed his chance at a seat next year, or do you think that his sponsors will keep him safe? Are you wondering if there's some kind of rule that every time a midfield driver does well in a sprint, they're destined to screw up in the main race? Or maybe you're more interested in Ferrari's turn of form over the weekend and have some thoughts on that one. Chat about it down in the comments. As always, thank you so much to my patrons for your continued support. If you would like to become a patron, the link is down in the description as well as right here on the screen. Give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more from me. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you next time. Ka kite.